Hey, what's up everybody? I'm Tommy. Today, I'm gonna show you how I made this minimalist wooden wallet with built-in RFID protection. Whether it's your first time here, or even if you've been here before, welcome to 1 Minute Workbench. So this is a front pocket wallet that's designed to be absolutely as slim as possible. It's self-adjusting, meaning whether you put 1 card or 10 cards in it, it's only ever as big as it needs to be because it expands and contracts as you either add or remove cards. To make this type of wallet from wood, you need to use a very durable type of hardwood. A friend of mine gave me a piece of ipe that he reclaimed from an old dock that was being torn down. Ipe, sometimes called Brazilian walnut, is a very resilient and incredibly hard wood. Taking off just a few thin layers of the weathered gray outside revealed a rich and beautiful interior color. After squaring it up, the piece looked amazing, but it did have some small splits near the end, so I trimmed those off on the miter saw. I used my sled to make the next cut because I have a better blade installed on my table saw and I wanted the cut to be as clean as possible. I made a few thin slices at 1/8 of an inch, and then chose 2 of those slices to make the plates for the wallet. I needed to put a semicircle shape in both plates, and they needed to match exactly with each other, but the plates weren't big enough to just drill the holes. So I clamped some sacrificial pieces around the plates and filled in the void with another sacrificial piece that was cut to the exact thickness of the 2 plates combined. I then made a mark for the center of the hole and drilled it out. Another benefit of having sacrificial material on both sides of the plate is that it significantly reduces the chances of having any tear out. I added a rubber pad to the end of this push stick to give me a little extra grip since these plates were so small. I cut both plates down to their final width. I carefully marked both plates and then cut them down to their final length. I used my caliper and my marking gauge to make sure my next marks would be very precise. The marks I'm making here were tough to catch on camera, but basically I'm adding marks that will guide me in making 2 notches on each plate. 1 at each end. Each notch will be just under an inch wide and only a 1/16 of an inch deep. Here you can better see the marks I've made. I carefully chiseled out the first half of the first notch, being careful not to go all the way through. I then flipped the plate over and did the same thing on the other side. So at this point, I had a notch that was started from both sides, but didn't go all the way through the plate. I then repeated that process for all the notches, but after seeing how hard the ipe was, I had gotten brave enough to use my mallet while chiseling. To finish off the notch, I just used my chisel to slice the material in several places and then shaved off those slices. Once all the notches were cut, and being careful to remember which faces of the plates I wanted facing outward, I picked the inside edges of 2 of the notches to chamfer with a flat file. It's very important that these chamfers will be facing towards the inside of the plates. This will make more sense in a little bit. So when I put the plates back together, the chamfers now worked together to make a small groove at one end of the wallet. I used adhesive copper tape to line the inside faces of the plates to make them RFID blocking. If you don't happen to have any copper tape on hand, you can ask a friend that plays electric guitar or electric bass. They might have some. Or if you have a friend that makes stained glass as a hobby, they might have some as well. I applied the copper as smoothly as I could, being sure to have no wrinkles, and then used a razor knife to trim it to match the plates. I cut a chamfer on the opposite edge of the semicircle on both plates. The chamfer should only go about halfway through the thickness of the material and should face the inside face of each plate. When I put the two plates back together, the combined chamfers now made a groove all along that side of the wallet. I gently rounded the corners of the plates with 150 grit sandpaper. The goal here was just to take off the sharpness. I did not want to completely change the shape of the plates. Likewise, I very gently softened all the sharp edges of the plates, being careful not to go too deep. Again, I wanted the wallet to retain its square aesthetic. I just didn't want all the corners and edges to be sharp. I applied a single coat of Minwax paste finishing wax, let it dry, and then rubbed off the excess. To make the strap for the wallet, I used a piece of 1-inch wide elastic. I wrapped it around the plates and tested the tension to see how long of a piece I should start with. When I found the right length, I cut the piece and cut the other frayed end off as well. If you don't have a sewing machine, you can do this by hand, but you need to use the same type of stitches that I'm showing here. If you want your band to last, you'll need to add two different types of stitches. The first stitch is just a straight stitch, but it's mandatory that you go all the way past the edge, off the material, and then back on. And don't worry about the threads hanging out past the ends. Your sewing machine will actually pull those tight. And make sure you make at least 2 or more passes. I then cut the excess elastic that was just past the stitch, while being careful not to cut the stitch itself. The second type of stitch you need to add is an overlock stitch, or a buttonhole type of stitch. I'm showing it slow here to start so you can see that the needle is actually going back and forth from left to right. Basically, it's wrapping around the straight stitch and around the outside edge of the material. Again, you need to make at least 2 passes and go all the way past the edges, off the material, and then back on. Otherwise, your stitch is going to fall apart. It was tough to try to get on camera, especially with black thread on black elastic, but again, the stitch is wrapped all the way around the outside of the material to keep it from fraying. In case you're wondering how I can be so sure that this is the best stitch to make sure that your band will last, this small sample of prototypes should give you an idea. I decided to retrim the copper just back from the edges so it wouldn't be visible when the wallet was assembled. I turned the band inside out so that the stitch was facing inward and set the stitch in the groove created by the chamfers at one end of the wallet, and then I looped the band over the other notch. With the strap added, the wallet is just barely over a 1/4 inch thick. The chamfers along the solid edge of the wallet make it to where you can get a credit card started to insert it into the wallet. In my experience, a wallet like this can hold anywhere from 1 card just fine without letting it fall out, up to as many as 10 cards or more without letting those fall out. The strap allows you to carry cash, which will also be very secure. And the thumb groove allows you to push the cards so you can fan them out and pick the card you're looking for. As you might have guessed, this isn't the first wallet I've ever made, but I think it's probably the nicest one yet. Hey, thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe, and make sure you hit the bell icon. That way you get notified every time I put out a new episode. I'd love to hear what you think about this wallet in the comments section below, and if you have any quick questions you want answered, hit me up on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. And until the next time I see you, I hope you have fun building something.